What is up, everybody, and welcome to FPL WildCats Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us for our second stream of 2019. If you weren't here for the first one, Happy New Year, first of all. And I will pass over to Nymphria, our hostess with the mostess, to carry on with the proceedings.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Welcome everyone to the show. And in a week where most of the premium forwards were a letdown, and with some of the biggest injury concerns we've had so far cropping up, let's take a look at how we got on last game week. So, I'll go over to breakfast.
You always come to me first.
I was going to go good, but I can see he's tapping.
Yeah, that was my fault. I accidentally started the stream early and Kurt wasn't ready yet.
I did actually have Kurt years ago.
Well, fortunately, I don't have to rip off plaster this time like we did last stream. A much better week this week. 71 points. So not a spectacular week, but very respectable and very happy with 71. Especially having carried transfer over, so nice to get 71 without making any transfers this week. And yeah, just all the points coming from my defence really, and Salah captain. And that's been a change for me this season because my defenders haven't done so great really throughout the season. But obviously Digne getting 12 points was very nice. Fabianski, a surprise 9-point draw against Arsenal. And the defence doubled up with Liverpool paid off as well. So Trent and Van Dijk getting 13 points between them. And then when Saka getting 4 points in a 2-1 defeat without any attacking returns, which is pretty unheard of. But yeah, happy to start him and get points from him too. Apart from that, it's just all defence, sort of a clean sweep of points, and then Salah captain. And then everyone else was blanks really. Pereira, Hazard, well, 1 assist for Hazard, 5 points. Richarlison, Snodgrass and Kane, obviously blanking against United. And yeah, Snodgrass just came off my bench. I didn't intend to play him, but I played Wilson. And his injury, which could be to do with his transfer speculation, I don't know. So that's a bit annoying. But yeah, a good 71 points, but lots to consider now next week with Rio and Trent and Kane, both being out now. So it looked like 2-3 transfers, so lots to decide tonight.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk a bit about that in a moment. But I'll head on over to Kurt first for how he got on. So tell us, how did you do, Kurt?
Yeah, it was a slightly better than normal sort of trash I'd get dealt. 57 points. Hazard's just about saved himself with a 5-pointer as my captain. I was very, very close to losing it a bit, especially with the Alonso clean sheet gone and still no attacking returns, which, although I keep on saying it's Alonso, his last attacking returns was game week 11. We're now heading into game week 23, so it's worrying on that part. Digne pretty much saved me, 12 points, an Everton performance to be, it was all right. Attacking returns, a clean sheet is what you want from an attacking defender. As well as that, Schindler made up for his red card by getting a clean sheet, albeit he got booked, which made me a bit worried about maybe another red card coming his way. Fortunately, talking about red cards, Willy Bolly saved me, got 6 points for Edison. Son was a bit of a disappointment. In fact, my entire pretty much front line was a bit of a disappointment, barring the Pogba and Rashford double up, which left me on 57 points. Saka on the bench on 4 was the only one I could see making it in. And now it's pretty simple for me now. I've just got to start making my way towards, trying to get some
retirement.
Yeah, maybe. It's better than normal. I've got a load of green arrows. I'm inside 1.5 million now, so you never know. We're just working towards the blank game weeks. 27 is popping up, and with Everton and Man City getting a blank, so to speak. I've got Salah coming in, so I'll have to get probably Bernardo Silva out. Either Chelsea or Spurs, so hopefully Spurs go through, because otherwise Hazard also be a bit of a problem. But I'm not too fussed about it because I think I'm going to start going up from here, maybe get inside the top million. But the team's actually in a decent position, which is the first time I can say this season.
Cool. Just got some reports coming in that we're having some sound issues. We do have some new tech going on at the minute, so bear with us. while we sort that out. Jay, should I talk about my team?
Yeah, that would be good.
Cool. Well, I'm a little bit chuffed with myself this week, to be honest, because I actually followed my gut and executed my plan and got Salah back in. So sorry about that, Kurt. Now, you're the only one left again. So I couldn't stay at the dark side very long. So anyway, it instantly granted me good luck, and I got 75 points at Green Arrow. I'm now just outside 200k. As Brett said, Fabianski was a surprise this week, 9 points. As you remember, I needed that 0.1 for Salah, and I was considering Gaeta for Fabianski, but I was saying something was niggling at me. I didn't really fancy it, so thankfully I didn't go there, because it looks like I might have dodged a bit of a bullet on that one. At least for this game week. I mean, he could be back next game week and do better than Fabianski, but my defence, creating a great base for the rest of my team, as much with Brett really. Digne, Robertson and Wan-Bissaka all getting good returns, though playing Snodgrass over Holobas was the difference of 6 points. So I'm would probably have beaten myself up more about that if my game week had been worse than what it was. But as it was quite a good game week, I'm not going to moan too much about it. Once Salah was back in, I didn't even consider another captain option really. So I was really grateful for his 22 points. Pogba and Rashford providing the holy grail goal for me with a goal and an assist. So pretty much very happy. Kane and Aubameyang, like two little ducks there with their 2 points apiece, not really doing very much. Very happy. Didn't want to really do anything this week, but I'm not sure I'm going to get away with that now that Kane's injured. So I don't really have much of a great bench.
Did you say Holobas was a 6 point difference to Snodgrass?
Well, yeah, because Snodgrass had 1 point and Holobas got 7 points.
He got 7 points today. Wow.
7 points.
I didn't realise he had 7. Fair play.
Yeah, so a bit annoying. Even though Holobas wasn't the first person on my bench, I had pretty much, how can I explain it? I had I was doing that whole, he's playing Arsenal, so I don't want to not play him in case he scores against us, and then it's even worse because he's just he's Snodgrass and he sat on the bench, where really I probably, because I've said it to so many other people, I probably should have just gone, well, Nasri's here now, we might end up playing him, see how he goes first. And yeah, so I should have been a bit more sensible there really, but it, like I said, it would have hurt more, I guess, if my game week had been a lot worse. But
yeah, it says a lot about your squad. If your bench is picking up decent points anyway, it's nice to have those options for the following week. So if you've got a big squad, you're always going to sometimes get burned.
Definitely. So Jay, how's it looking? Are we doing good? Are we any better?
I think so.
We don't sound like robots anymore.
As far as I can tell, I've been told not to touch it anymore. So I'm taking that as a good sign.
The echo has all gone. It's just the sound, I think, is quite low compared to every other thing. But if the echo's gone, it's okay. It's fine.
So we need to shout, do we? Cool. Anyway, Jay, would you like to tell us about how you got on?
Okay, so I didn't make any transfers going into this game week, so I do now have 2 to make, which is good with the Son issue of going to the Asian Cup. I got 63 points in the end, which wasn't amazing. It did see me drop in rank by about 200. That's it. So it's not like it's a major disaster, and it's above the average. Digne, of course, being a good player for me. Mohamed Salah being probably my only attacker other than maybe Pogba, Sane, that was worth captaining. And Pogba did get the assist, but only 5 points. But Wan-Bissaka and Foster both getting 4 points despite conceding was quite surprising for me. And of course, I got the Schindler call completely wrong. Schindler's third substitute, 5 points, and he'd have been better than both Alonso and Doherty. So not too bad for me, but now with 2 transfers, I'm quite happy. Hopefully going to get Rashford in, I imagine, and have to replace Son and I don't want Alonso either, so it may be free transfers with a -4 hit going into game week 23 for me.
Nice. Cool. Well, do we have any questions in the chat, or has it all been about our?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think we should probably start with maybe a Twitter question, just
Okay,
because it has
cool.
mostly been about the sound in the
No
chat. So I'll
worries.
try and get the guys. If you're watching, guys, get your questions in the chat, and I'll note them down, and we can answer them shortly.
Yeah, brill stuff. So at Hindu Monkey would like to know, with Kane out and so many mids providing such good value, is anyone looking at playing 3 strikers stuck in the dark ages of FPL? So, I don't know how many of us have Kane here. So I've got Kane.
I've got Kane.
Yeah, and I think we're the only
Nope.
two.
I don't have Kane.
So just to clarify the question, he wants when he says 3 strikers, does he mean like 3 budget strikers?
Yeah, I think
Or
just 3
just
strikers, no matter
starting
who
3
they
strikers
are.
in the game
Yeah,
week, let's
just
say.
basically playing 3, 4-3 or 3.
Well,
I'll do 5-3. What am I talking about?
maybe I've misunderstood the question a little bit, but the first part of the question is about having all these amazing options in midfield.
Yes.
And I'm in that boat now because I've got 4 fairly expensive midfielders, or at least mid to expensive, and then 1 budget midfielder, which is Snodgrass. But because there are so many options that I still don't have, like Pogba, for example, which is someone that I just need to get, I think, at this point. I am thinking to downgrade Kane now quite significantly. And with the emergence of Rashford, who I also haven't got, that does free up a lot of money. So I am in this position now where I'm considering to basically just pump loads of money into my midfield and have 5, 6 million plus midfielders. So yeah, that's what I'm considering. And I think that's the way I'm going to go, because there are so many options. And I'm going to pack out my midfield with 5 top players, and I still won't even have any City cover. Like, that's how many options there are at the moment. So Pogba's sort of the main target for me. And
Definitely.
rather than upgrading Richarlison and saving money, because I could upgrade Richarlison, but Richarlison, even though he's not playing well, it's one less headache if I keep him because he has got great fixtures. So Snodgrass is someone that I do need to move on soon, I think. Nasri's taken his place. Granted, it's nice to have a budget option that you can bench, but at the moment there's just so many midfielders. Snodgrass looks like he's going to be going for me. So I think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, lots of teams pumping a lot of money into midfield now. I think it's more than a viable option.
What I would say though is I don't think it's a blanket thing, because we can get quite caught up on like what people are doing in Twitter, and there are a lot of teams that are too cheap up front, or 1 premium and 1 cheap up front, and then somebody really cheap like Kamara, say, on their bench. And then, like you said, a really stacked midfield, and they're the ones that seem to kind of be catching me out most weeks, I think. But there are some of us that are still playing 3 strikers up front. I mean, until Kane's injury, I was Kane, Aubameyang, and Rashford. So, we are still out there. Yes, I'm playing in the dark ages of FPL, obviously, but there's a few of us still out there for sure, definitely. Okay. So I guess the big one this week that most of us are talking about, at Lonesome Pundit asks, what are we all doing about Spurs? Fixtures really are terrific, but no Son, no Kane, maybe Moura again. Not sure if he's back. And I Am Paul follows this a bit, asking, is now the time to invest in Spurs defence, and is Lloris an option? So, Jay, thoughts on Spurs?
I mean, don't get me wrong, last week I was absolutely sure that I should be replacing Son with someone else from Spurs. I just saw the fixtures and thought, with those fixtures, a Spurs option is either necessary just to make sure you don't lose points to other people, or just the better, smarter move if other people aren't bringing them in. However, if I actually look at the Spurs side without thinking about fixtures, they don't have Son or Kane in that side right now. And that would worry me picking any of their players. Who is going to lead the line? Who is going to be that person that is going to score the goals that Christian Eriksen and Dele Alli can create? However, apparently, historically, Dele Alli does step up with goals when Kane isn't featuring. So it's whether I think Ali can step up again, because I personally don't think he's been as impressive as Son or Kane. Is he going to step up and put in those kind of performances that he can do? If he can, then I think he's someone you need to bring into your side. But it's that guessing game. And I think there's so many other options where potentially you can be a bit more certain that they are going to do well over the next couple of fixtures. There are a lot of teams right now with good options that are cheap that could do well. You've got Spurs, of course, but you've got Man United with a good 6 fixtures apart from Liverpool in Gameweek 27. You've got Arsenal. They do have 2 tough fixtures in the next 3, but after those 3, they again have good fixtures. Liverpool have a good 4 fixtures from this point onwards, and you've got players like Shaqiri who do seem to be starting. So I may just avoid Spurs until I either decide that Ali is going to be that player that is going to perform well or not. So I'm not sure I'll be going with a Spurs attacker right off the start. With the defence, they are one of the better defences in the league, but then I think of that Everton game, I think of the Man United game, chances can be created against them. I'm just not too confident in their defence. So if I was going to go there, it probably would be Trippier just in case he can get those assists. But that's about it.
Agreed, definitely. Anyone else got anything to add to any of those?
My only really point to put into perspective with Spurs is that I'm a big fan of the classic big brooding number 9. I feel sorry for Fernando Llorente in all of this, because I feel like if he's given the service in this Spurs team, the talent that they can put into the area. You think of Eriksen, one of the better playmakers in the league. You've got Trippier, who's got a phenomenal cross on him. I think if Llorente's given a chance, he could do a lot of good work in the Spurs team. But I know for a fact it'll probably be Lucas stepping up. It will be Ali potentially playing further forward, Lamela playing further forwards. My worry, though, with the Spurs defence is that they sort of rely on energy in the midfield. Dembele is all but gone. Sissoko potentially is out with an injury. So when it comes to energy, they've not got that player to constantly run up and down and do that for 90 minutes. So it worries me for Spurs, albeit the fixtures are good. The defenders doesn't interest me in the slightest.
Yeah, just quickly, that's the thing with me, because before the Kane injury, like Jay was saying, the fixtures are fantastic for Spurs. We mentioned it in the last stream about them obviously playing a lot of away games. So I think in the next 6 fixtures they play 4 at home, 3 on the bounce as well against good opposition. So yeah, I was of the thinking that I'm going to try and get 2 Spurs players in if possible, for that amazing run. Obviously I had Kane. So now I've got none, which is frustrating. And yeah, like Kurt said, with the defenders, I would like to get one in, but there is a lot of rotation there, with the fullbacks. So then you're kind of stuck between Vertonghen and Alderweireld maybe, but neither of them, for 6 million, they haven't really shown enough attacking output for me to consider them, So I think that in the question, someone meant that the guy who asked the question mentioned Lloris, and he's probably not a player I'm going to be able to get because I've just got other things, other fires to put out in my team at the moment. But if I could make a goalkeeper transfer at one point, Lloris would be one of the top of my list right now. For 5.4 million, he's a cheaper way into that Spurs defence, and he's the one guaranteed starter, and the fixtures are amazing. So if I could switch my keeper, Lloris would definitely be up there. So if that guy can afford to get him, then he's definitely a good shout, in my opinion.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, really, if I'm honest. I can see why, and the money definitely appeals, but I think I'd rather try and stretch out my cash and get Alisson. But I can completely see why you would consider Lloris. That's just more of a personal thing, really. I think he does better because of the defenders in front of him. Lloris more so, I think, than his actual goalkeeping skills. But maybe we should move on from that. So do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, lots of questions. So Nima wants to know who they should replace Kane with. And they've already got Rashford and Jimenez. So there's two strikers there that I'm probably going to have because I'm going to replace Kane with Rashford most likely. What about you, Nim? Who are you going to replace Kane with?
See, I was we had a little chat about this before we came on air, and of course I wanted Aguero. Like there was not even like 1 second thought. I was like, if Kane, Kane's going down, then I'm considering Aguero. And then when he didn't start last night, it kind of really, well, that was kind of the end of that really, because then Jesus went on to score 2 goals and Aguero didn't really come on and change anything. The tempo didn't exactly lift and he didn't have a massive amount of chances. And so I struggle. I don't know. I'm struggling to think whether he starts again, on the weekend. I don't know what you guys think, but without a doubt, if I knew he was going to start, which is why I'll probably wait for the press articles before I actually do anything. If I can, it's going to be tough. But if I can, then I'll probably wait it out. But then I've sat here week after week and said that I need to move money into my midfield as well. And with 3, quite expensive strikers, maybe I should be considering downgrading. And if I did that, I would be considering somebody like Jimenez. So I'm not really in the same boat if I'm honest, because I already have a Aubameyang. The obvious move, of course, is to go from Kane to Aubameyang. But you could consider Firmino. He's happily ticking away there. I know that Brett was there before all of us.
Brett's got a lot to say about that.
Yeah. Was even there before any of us. So I'm not sure whether you would consider going back there. Would you, Brett?
Obviously, I've thought about this because there is a lot of chat about Firmino, and I actually put it in my notes here for the stream because I'm going to see what you guys thought, because lots of people are considering Firmino again now, great fixtures. And since I dropped him, maybe 8-9 games,
actually,
maybe 9 game weeks ago, since I took him out, he's actually delivered a lot of points. And it was only like yesterday that I looked at like the top scoring forwards, and he's like 4th now. Like for the season, he's actually right up there, which is quite hard to believe. Obviously, the hat-trick against Arsenal helped him a lot. Yeah. I don't think I can go back there personally. I mean, at the moment, I got to get rid of Trent, but I have got a Liverpool triple up. Now getting rid of Trent would free up that spot, but I'm probably going to look to get 2 Liverpool defenders, and then I've got Salah. So it's probably going to be impossible for me to get Firmino anyway. But even if I could, I just don't, probably because of what's happened to me earlier in the season, but I'm still not fully convinced by him. Love the fixtures, could do great, but I don't know. I'm still not convinced about Firmino personally. Just looking at his stats and, still not getting as forward as he maybe did last season. So
nobody else really shone on the weekend, did they? I mean, if Vardy had scored a goal, would we be thinking, oh, should we be looking at him? And then Jesus did fantastically, but we're all sat here going, well, does he keep his spot? So it's a bit, yeah. What do you think, Kurt?
It's an interesting one, and it's a weird one because in terms of recent performances and consistency, no one above Rashford in price shouts out as a decent option. Aubameyang is in and out of goals. Is he going to be consistent enough? Aguero was dropped. Is he going to be switched? Same with Jesus. Lukaku's second choice to Rashford. Lacazette potentially second choice to Aubameyang, could be in and out of the team. Firmino, you never know if he's going to play as a striker or a centre-back, a sweeper, however deep he goes. Vardy isn't potentially, too consistent of a choice. You look at the fact he scored 2 goals in the last 5 games. And besides that, he also blanked 3 games before that. By granted, he didn't play in 2 of them. Then you've got the 2 Chelsea boys, Morata and Giroud. There's no one really shining out. You've got to look at potentially bolstering up your midfield, like Im said. There's no real. I mean, if you want to take Aubameyang, I think he's a striker that in the next 6, granted he's got a few tough games in there, he will score against the weaker teams, and potentially on the breakaway could score with his pace against the bigger teams. But if you don't like the looks of Aubameyang, we already got Aubameyang, you've got to downgrade and upgrade your midfield because there's no real standout striker at the moment besides
sure.
Aubameyang.
And you just know, don't you? The second you downgrade, or at least in my shoes, like Chelsea buy somebody like Higuain, suddenly I'm thinking, I want the money there so I can buy Higuain. You know, you're just kind of waiting for the big story to happen, you know. Or at least we would like to know what's happening with Wilson so we know whether we can buy him as an option somewhere for sure. But Jay, anything to add to any of that?
Not really. I mean, if you actually look at underlying stats, really Aubameyang, Firmino and Rashford are the only ones that are consistently in the top 5 for pretty much every underlying statistic. So if you really wanted to make the move, the question, I believe they already had Aubameyang and Rashford. So
they have Rashford and Jimenez. So they've got kind of they've got two budget strikers there, really.
So I would either go Firmino or Aubameyang. Liverpool's and Arsenal's fixtures aren't terrible, and those are the two strikers that are at least getting the shots on target, the expected goals. The numbers are there that potentially they could get something, but to be honest, Rashford does look like the best option right now.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Firmino then, personally, Jay? Because I wasn't expecting you to to say that. So
well, it was basically because
now's your time to talk back into it.
Yeah, convince me.
Well, the main reason I was looking at forwards, I didn't have Kane, but I was looking at forwards because of Ings' injury, and if I did need to change him, I clearly wanted Rashford. I'm happy with Jimenez. To be honest, I'm happy with Aubameyang. It's very disappointing when he has those games where he has a lot of chances and doesn't score. But the fact that he's still getting those chances, the fact that he is still getting games where he does bring me some points, right now there's other players I want to get on my side before Aubameyang. So Aubameyang and Jimenez, for me, I'm happy with at the moment. So for me, it was mainly to find who would replace Ings. And Rashford and Firmino clearly stood out as the best options out of all the strikers. You did have players like Barnes popping up in some of them, Mitrovic popping up in some of them, but Rashford and Firmino consistently were in every single underlying statistics top 5 for the last 6 game weeks. Personally, I've already got Salah. I'm probably bringing in a Liverpool defender because I got rid of Robertson for Trent. Then Trent picked up an injury or something like that, so I got rid of Trent for someone else. Then I never got a Liverpool defender back in. And it's because I was looking at other areas, and every week the difference between me and a lot of the sides around me was they had a Liverpool defender and I didn't. So a Liverpool defender is almost a must at this point. Of course, Trent Alexander-Arnold now goes and picks up an injury, and he would have been the one I'd most likely have brought in. But for me, Firmino's unlikely because I've got Salah. If I didn't have Salah, then Firmino might be the one that I would bring in.
Yeah, and so that I kind of guess we've answered a little bit, but Lonesome Pundit would like to know, is the Barnes train derailed?
I didn't think it
Did
started,
it even leave the station, LP? Did it even leave the station? I'm not sure.
But I think the way I looked at it was, yes, he had good underlying statistics, but the player needs to be of a certain level to be taking those chances. And right now, if you compared someone like Barnes to someone like Rashford, some of Barnes' underlying stats are better than Rashford's, but Rashford just looks quality at the moment and looks like he's going to make the most of what he gets. Whereas Barnes is in a Burnley side that aren't potentially going to get as many goals as this Man United side. I just never like the look of it despite the numbers being there. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes you can get so sucked into the numbers, but you've got to think, is the player quality enough to make the most of those chances?
And I do kind of feel a bit like that with Ings, if I'm honest. I feel like, Ings does really make the most of his chances when he's got them. So he's another option for me because he's really quite cheap. And so it really would invest quite a lot of money back. It could make Snodgrass a Sterling, for instance, So that's, or Hazard. So
did you say Danny Ings? Is this talking about
Ings?
Or?
Yeah.
What's the latest with Ings then? Is he, what is the latest with the injury? Do we know?
I think the last report we heard was that he'd be back for this match. But of course, I think we'll have to wait and see,
It's been updated on Ben Dinnery's site. On January 14th, Ings will hopefully return to training tomorrow. So maybe a search on Twitter to see if he was pictured at training today would be worthwhile afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, because like Nim was saying, I actually really like Ings as an option if he's coming back. At that price, 5.5, as someone that you can afford to then bench if you need to. But I just love Southampton's run of games.
Yeah, they're like top of the fixture. Like ratings, aren't they?
I mean, he scored against Everton away earlier in the season. And, being like ex-Liverpool, I kind of fancied him to do that. And he plays them at home next. If he can make it to that game, then, they're sort of lacking forwards at the moment. And he's on penalties as well, as far as I know. So I do like Ings. I think if he's fit, he is a bargain at that price.
And don't rule out Calvert-Lewin as well. If you want somebody really cheap, obviously
how much is he?
You're not going to get, I think it's like 5.
Oh God!
I say
he was actually like a legit option last year, wasn't he? I never got on board with that.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't. He's not going to get you 90 minutes of every match, but when he does come on, he does tend to do something. So, he's one of those ones that you probably wouldn't want to play unless you absolutely had to, but wouldn't be a terrible option maybe off of your bench. So, cool. Do we have any more questions in the chat?
Yeah, I think we should go to this one from Alex Summerson first. Okay. Now, assuming we all had Trent Alexander-Arnold in our teams now, obviously the news today is that Trent's out for at least, 2 weeks to a month. So he's already got Doherty and Digne. They're the two defenders he's got. He's got 6 million to spend. Who should he replace TAA with? Has anyone got TAA at the moment?
No, not
no.
Me. he was the person I was going to bring in, but yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I'm
well,
I've
got
Robertson
Trent.
Owner.
All right. Chill out.
I'm not coming at you, dude.
I wish I owned Robertson. Yeah. I should have got him at the start of the season at 6 million. It's a bit harder now at 6.6. But so I've got Trent. So I'm in this position as Alex is. So he's got Doherty and Digne. I've got the same. So it sounds like he's in a very similar boat to me, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, the one option, I do like Luke Shaw. I do like Luke Shaw at his price, like 5.1, I think he is, maybe 5 million, 5.1. Now, the only thing that's pulling me away from Luke Shaw is that I'm probably going to get Rashford and Pogba with my 2 free transfers, and then I'm a bit reluctant to then triple up on United. I don't want to go from 0 to 3 and sort of hedge all my bets on United, just in case. Like, don't get me wrong, their form is incredible and they're playing well, but you're then putting a lot of hope into United retaining that form, However, having a triple up of United wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because their fixtures are incredible. So they've got both form and fixtures, So for Alex, I do think Luke Shaw is a legit option. We talked a lot about Ricardo Pereira in the last stream.
I was going to say that, maybe Pereira.
And he's another, at the same price as Trent, another very sensible and straightforward option. But like we said before, game week 27 was that's what I was looking at for Pereira. And what I mean by that, Alex, is that Leicester's fixtures are very difficult now for the next 4 game weeks. I believe they play Liverpool, City, United, and Wolves away in the next 4. Not in that order, but they're the 4 teams they play, I think. So Pereira for the next 4 are difficult. So, yeah, I think Luke Shaw's probably the best option now at that price. At 6 million to spend, I mean, Spurs have got great fixtures, Yeah, so I don't know if I would outlay 6 million on the likes of.
You could go to David Luiz.
Yeah, Luiz is actually a very good option. To be fair, that's a good one. That is a decent shout. Has anyone got any more input on for 6 million who he could bring in then to replace Trent?
To play devil's advocate, I think Luke Shaw isn't the best choice, and that's pure. Well, that's a controversial choice. Luke Shaw's the best choice of a weak-looking Man United back line. I think Spurs were very good in creating chances against Man United. The fact De Gea was forced into making 11 saves, and 11, not as if it was 30 yards out, save, 30 yards out, save, 28 yards out, save. They were all most of them were inside the area, good chance, too close to De Gea, armed away. That's the worrying thing, is that Spurs had so many chances created. If Man United, let's say, do that again, do they concede 3 or 4 goals? Because it's their second clean sheet, and they looked a bit better against Newcastle, but in all the other games they've conceded. Now, that's my only worry with Luke Shaw. In terms of players, I think the next player I get in will be Ricardo Pereira, or potentially double up with Alonso and David Luiz. If that's a bit of an interesting one, but I do think Chelsea are solid at the back.
There
But
is
David
a guy.
Luiz
There is a guy in my mini league who has 2 Chelsea defenders, and he absolutely slaughters us week in week out with his double Chelsea defence, and it's really quite frustrating. It really is. You're like, so yeah, I'm gonna get a clean sheet here. Yeah, then you check, and he's getting 2. You're like, and he has Liverpool defence as well, so he's just murdering everyone with his like premium defence in Liverpool and Chelsea. It's like, come on, how is this even happening?
Yeah, that's my only worry with Manchester United. The fact that they were forced into that De Gea was forced into so much action. If it was all world-class saves as well, you'd think, oh, potentially he's just too good to be beaten. But they're all soft shots. If a couple of them goes more into the corner, they lose that game 2 or 3-1. That's the worry I have with Man United option. But with Luke Shaw, he'll be going forward. The potential for attacking returns. That's where it sort of counterbalances for me, at least.
Cool. I've got one here at FPL_JK asks, which mid would you move out to get Salah? Would it be Richarlison or Anderson? He'll do Kane or Aubameyang to Rashford to fund it, which I assume will be Rashford now, given the Kane news. So, Jay, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, to me, we all know what I think about Richarlison. So
what is your feelings on Richarlison, by the way?
He's a trap. You should never bring him in. Should never have brought him in. He pretty much did what he did last season. He's had a good start, and then it's really slowed off. The underlying stats are still there. He's just not doing anything with the chances he's getting. Whereas Anderson, to me, feels like a real quality player. Bit worried about the rumours of players leaving. You've got Arnautovic, and now today Hernandez. West Ham have come out and said they want to keep Hernandez. I'm not sure why you'd have to say that unless someone was trying to get him. But for me, comparing Richarlison against Anderson, I think Anderson is your better choice. Anderson scored 2 goals in the last 6 compared to Richarlison's 1. You've got 1 assist apiece. You've also got penalty area touches, which I thought Richarlison would stand head and shoulders above Anderson in. It's actually 27 to 26. And as far as shot accuracy, when they do get their chances, shot accuracy for Richarlison 16.7% compared to 40% for Felipe Anderson. So when Anderson gets those chances, he's hitting the target more often, and of course you can't score unless you hit the target. So, and then of course if you take chance creation into account, Anderson's head and shoulders above Richarlison. 13 chances created to 1 in the last 6. So for me, it'd be a no-brainer. The only reason you'd go the other way is if it was for a budget reason, as Richarlison is cheaper than Felipe Anderson.
Yeah, definitely agree with all of that. Like I've got there much of a muchness really as a Richarlison owner. It feels like he gets a goal or nothing much at all, really, which sounds like it's backed up in the stats. Whereas, again, backed up by the stats, it seems like Anderson's just much more kind of like creative with his movements. He seems to be, getting forward a lot more. I'll be keeping Richarlison because of his fixtures, I think, more so than anything else, unless, of course, I get some extra funds now from Kane, and then I might consider going near neither of them, I guess. But I do prefer Anderson as a player, as we were saying last time. I touted him a bit pre-season, so it's a difficult one, though. I think that one it
is very difficult.
It might just be come down to who you prefer owning, really, to some extent. Who you can stick having in your team. The thing about Richarlison is, I guess he's got percentage, hasn't he, with who's owned. So it's Brett, anything to add to that?
I have to agree with you. It's very difficult, this one. These are 2 players that we see a lot of teams having both. So the person asking the question's in a position, and that probably lots of people are. I think lots of teams have got both of them, and they're both players that I've wanted this season, and I've ended up with Richarlison, and I haven't owned Anderson this season. But
I think it's fun.
I think Maybe it's because I don't own Anderson, but I'd much prefer watching him play. He just looks a lot more dangerous, and he's involved in a lot more of how West Ham play and what they do. Whereas I think Richarlison has been a bit unlucky the last couple of weeks. He's had a chance cleared off the line, I think, in the last 2 games, but I don't know. He doesn't seem to be as involved. He's just sort of stuck up front, and if Everton aren't really on song, he's not really getting that much service. Whereas every time I watch Anderson play, he just seems to be involved in everything, really, and just seems like the better footballer at this point. I think if I owned both of them right now, it would be Richarlison. It would be. I know he's got good fixtures, but West Ham's run isn't bad either. But it is such a coin flip that it's really difficult. And, because Richarlison could easily punish you in the next week. And that's why I'm too scared to sell him. Because even though I'm not satisfied with how Richarlison's playing, I am aware that he could easily punish me if I get rid. But the same goes for Anderson. Bournemouth away next. Bournemouth are conceding goals. The only thing that would concern me with Anderson, and I know this is kind of like a varied answer because it is a tough one, is that with Arnie going, and now they're selling Chicharito potentially, is that going to benefit Anderson or not? And there is a bit of uncertainty whether that's going to help him or not. It's such a tough one. Well, I'm sorry, I can't give a straight answer there.
There is rumours that West Ham are trying to enter the race for Callum Wilson.
Yes, I did hear that.
So would that change your mind if Callum Wilson went to West Ham?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it would. It would. Look, if I had both of them, I would keep Anderson over Richarlison, I think.
But then you could say if you were going to get Wilson, do you want both of them?
You don't need Anderson.
I've been to 2 West Ham already this season, and look how that turned out. It was brilliant for 1 game.
My main issue with Richarlison is if Everton start playing well, then Richarlison becomes a very viable option. I just don't feel that team is playing very well. That first half, I still haven't seen it yet, but everyone's told me Everton were rubbish the first half of their game.
It was
apparently it was the worst football people have watched in ages. So I'm kind of happy I haven't seen it.
I don't know why he insists on continuing to keep him up front. He just does. He's not great there. Do you know what I mean? It's not brilliant. Anyway, should we have some questions from the chat? Kurt, do you see any questions in the chat for us? Or you've been too busy looking at pictures of Danny Ings?
Well, I was doing my detective work. I heard someone say, so I thought I'll have a look, and I get him confused constantly with Shane Long for some reason. So I've been caught a bit off guard there. I've only just stopped my detective work. I was looking through the rest of the pictures.
Sorry, I'll go to Brett.
Sorry.
I'll throw the question to Kurt. So Hassan wants to know, when do we think is the best time to play the wildcard? Obviously, we've got a new one now for the second half of the season. And when are you guys thinking to use it? So Kurt, have you used yours? Or
I've been tempted because I think I can make a few really good teams. But the last time I made a really good team, it was really, really good for 1 game week. And I went straight back to the normal dross I've been served up. So I'll save that, I think. It's completely the way I look at every year the way I do it is the second half. The first half is when I feel like thing is completely going down the drain, I'll use it. The second half is always usually linked in with double game weeks. So I'll try and sort of calm it in so I can get it done. Maybe not a radical overhaul, like 12 new players in, but I'm sort of covered for the double game weeks because, before, without the wildcards, it was a lot harder. Now, I think with the wildcards, free hit can cover 1 double game week. And then you're thinking, if you go triple captain, let's say, another double game week, you technically don't really need to use the wildcard at all. I will potentially be using it at the end-ish, maybe, of January, just after the 4th round of the FA Cup, just so I can see what I'm working with, guide my team slightly towards that, so I can hopefully get through a blank game week without maybe using too many minus points. But I think it all depends. I normally use it in January. That's the time I find it most useful. I don't know about.
Do you wait for the transfer window to be shut?
That's the other thing that coincides with it. The fact that at the moment you could use you could use it, and you think, I've made a really good team. Chelsea sign a new striker. Arnautovic actually leaves. Wilson goes to West Ham, everything could change, and there could be fresh injuries. Let's say there could be a multitude of things that happen. So the fact if you use it after the fourth round of the FA Cup, you've then got transfer window pretty much done and dusted, and you've got all pretty much nailed in who's going to play, who's not going to play for the new players as well. So I'd say end of January is probably the safest bet.
Nice. Good answer. Anyone got anything to add to that or do something different?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will. The wildcard question's getting brought up because of this whole Kane injury and Trent injury. So there's lots of teams like, oh my God, I didn't think I was going to have to wildcard, and now they're kind of being forced into it, or at least they feel like they're being forced into it. Earlier in the season, when we had the first wildcard during the first half of the season, for me personally, I always think the longer I can hold it, the better. Personally, because you set up your team at the start of the season, you hope you can set up a good team that lasts a while, so you can keep that in your back pocket. And it's the same for me now. I don't want to use the wild card at the moment. There's still I've still got a decent squad, and I'm hoping I can just kind of maneuver with my free transfers to fix these problems, And the wild card for me is always the ideal situation is to save it to then utilize it when we get the double game weeks. So when we get a big double game week, which I think is going to be game week 35. I think is potentially going to be a very big one. The strategy that I like to use is to wildcard the game week before, get 15 players full of double game week players for the following game week. So that's the initial plan, to hold my wildcard until game week 34. And I know this sounds really obvious, but a few years back, I didn't realize about 3 seasons ago that you can't play chips in the same game week. So if anyone's watching that doesn't know that, be careful, because my plan for like 3 seasons ago was to wildcard and bench boost in one like major game week, only to realize I played the wildcard, got loads of plays, and I couldn't use the bench boost. I know that sounds amateur, but there's a lot of people that don't realize that. It's something really obvious that we don't realize. So my plan is game week 34, fill my squad up to then utilize the bench boost, so get 15 players, 15 double game week players, and hopefully reap the rewards from that. That's the plan anyway, but depends if I can keep my squad good until that point.
Cool. And Jay, you got anything different there?
To be honest, I pretty much always plan to do the same strategy that Brett just mentioned, which is save the wild card until I've got a good idea of the blanks and the double game weeks. However, I have played it earlier when I felt it's necessary, and I think it's one of those things that if you really think you need to refresh your side, if you can wait until after January, just so you know every single transfer move that is made, because you'd hate to play your wild card and then 2 of your players leave the league or something like that. But I have had success doing both. So I would say it's all about your team. If you really think right now that team isn't going to do well up until those blanks and double game weeks, then you might as well make the change now and then try and navigate the blanks and doubles as best as you can. But I, at the moment, think I'm in a place where I can save it until I have a better idea of what is coming up once the transfer window's gone and what the fixtures will be moving forward.
Just remember that exactly that. Like, remember that there will be a lot of people out there that will be in the same boat as you. Will not have Kane. Will not have Trent. This game week, and so there will be a fair few hits flying around. If how can I explain? If you can get away with making 1 or 2 changes and leave one on the bench, yes, you're going to lose value on them, but it's not. How can I explain? Do you really want a wild card for 3 players? Do you know what I mean? Unless there's loads of other players you definitely want is kind of where I would go with that. But definitely, for me, it's very personal thing. I tend to try and keep all of my chips now. I've talked about it before on my streams and on my videos and things like that. I tend to use them a bit like Mario Kart boosts, like the mushrooms, mushrooms, and try and use them all towards the end and just kind of push myself as much up the rankings as I can towards the end. So that's what I like to try and do. But I'm also not scared of taking a hit. So it doesn't always work out, but last week it got me an extra 11 points. So, swings and roundabouts. It's very, very subjective to your own team for sure. Definitely. So, okay. So I think that kind of helps cover a little bit about the blanks and doubles, because Matt 97 asked how to plan for the up and coming blank and double game weeks. But he asked more if you've already used your wild cards. So if we've got anything to add to that to help him out, that'd be
So he's
good.
already used his wild card.
Yeah, he's already used it. So he's wondering what else he can do to really kind of help with.
I don't think it's not the end of the world if you've already used it. Like, holding on to it, like I said, for me is the ideal, but you never know what position your squad's going to be in. If I can hold on to it that long, then great. But you don't want to tell yourself I'm going to keep hold of it. And then, you're kind of not having great game week after great game week. You're having bad weeks all the time just to keep holding it. It could actually detriment what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? That makes sense. If you've already used it, I think it just requires, we don't have much information on the double game weeks and stuff yet. The FA Cup weekend, which is the week after next weekend for the fourth round, that'll give us a lot more information then about which teams are going to be having blanks and doubles and that kind of thing. So yeah, just staying up to date with it, keeping an eye on it, and then the more transfers you can save in the build up to it as we get a bit closer, and just making moves that towards those blanks and just preparing for them, basically. If you maybe 3 or 4 game weeks before, just slowly building your team towards those blanks, the doubles. I think without a wild card, it's just
jump on a bandwagon just because it's a really good bandwagon. Maybe jump on the bandwagon if they've got a good double or something coming up.
Exactly. So just be more almost heightened, more methodical with your transfers, and thinking maybe less 1 week punts and more about I'm going to bring this player in now because he should serve me well in 3 or 4 game weeks time. He has a double game week coming up, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And at Sheriff 2, Scorp echoes that question as well, but wanted to know what teams to stick with. So I'd say definitely follow up Ben Krellin because he's quite helpful with the blanks and doubles, and stick with Liverpool because they're the one we know so far. But Jay, you summed up quite nicely earlier on with the blanks and doubles.
Well, yeah, look, basically right now we only really have a good idea of what's happening in game week 27. So right now that would be my focus. What I would do is right now Man City very, very likely to have a blank in game week 7, and that means Everton also likely to have a blank in game week 27. I say likely just to cover myself, just in case some sort of miracle happens. But so right now, with potentially Spurs and Chelsea being the other team in the final, you're probably not looking at too many of your players that won't be playing in that game week. So it should be something that you can react to slowly in time, and maybe take out the ones with the tougher fixtures first, and then work your way to a game week 27 side that you're happy with. Then, of course, when you do get to the doubles and blanks, which are a bit more congested as far as how many teams do play doubles and how many teams do blank, as soon as you know which teams are blanking, I would start to slowly get those players out of my side as well. Again, look at the fixtures. Who has a good run up until they're blank? You could potentially transfer them out the game week that they have that blank. And the ones that have a tough run of fixtures up to that blank, take them out a little bit earlier. Start bringing in the players that have a good run of fixtures going into a double before the players that have tough fixtures before their double. And so it does take a lot of planning if you've already used your wild card. But to be honest, a lot of us will be doing that planning anyway, because we're going to want to utilise our wild card for one double. So the other double, we won't have a wild card. So it's either you use a free hit, which I prefer to use the free hit for the blank game week, because there'll be one game week where the blank game week is quite severe, usually. And for me, it's best to use the free hit for that one. So there will be people having to plan for one of the double game weeks anyway. So it's a lot of planning, but fortunately, it's not like the Christmas period where it all happens suddenly. And you have to react quickly. You will have time to think about it. So just make a plan. Some moves may not work, some moves may work, but make your plan, try and stick to it to benefit from those double game weeks as best you can.
Yeah, and just to add, really, if there's a player that you want to keep, somebody who's like a season long player, you don't just because they got a blank coming up. We're not saying definitely sell them, are we? We're just saying maybe you could work something where they could spend a week on the bench,
Well, yeah, the
because
only
if you haven't
reason.
got a wild card, that you're not getting them back in, are you? So, say a Salah, and you don't want to get rid of him. He could spend a week on the bench, just try and do a bit of planning where somebody else could be playing that week for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the really difficult thing as well is what I believe is so the first blank game week is game week 27, right?
Yes.
Is that right? So we've got like 3 or 4 game weeks now to plan for that blank.
Yeah.
Then the next one is game week 31. So there's another 4 game weeks there to kind of plan for it. However, the trickiness is that the following game week after blank 31 is the double comes in game week 32. That's where it does get very tricky, because if you're planning then to have very few blank game week players, then maybe you're not then prepared very well for the game week 32 double, So look,
So what I will say about last week, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, was
no, all good.
just what I got in my head is that there were quite a few teams I seen out there last season that only had like 7 or 8 players in one of the blanks, but they happened to be really strong players and matched my score easily with a starting 11. So
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world, if you don't have a
No, you're
full
right.
team for
You're
sure.
right. I think
So-
sometimes people find it, at least I did, I found it a success when I had like 9 players playing in it. If you can get like 8 or 9 playing players, sometimes that can be a good thing,
Yeah.
Also, that's why I think the free hit is so good for a blank game week before a double, because then you can plan for that double and then just use the free hit.
Yes.
And then you go back to your planned double game week side.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Do we have a couple in the chat before I do our non-related FPL related questions?
Yes. Just before I do another question, I actually wanted to shout out somebody who's in our
Okay.
Wildcats league, and I was
Cool.
basically having a little look earlier, and they're ranked 7th in the world right now.
Wow.
It's Shannon Shillington. I'm not sure if they'll be
Oh.
watching, but they're ranked 7th.
Hi, Shannon.
They're in all the YouTube leagues, all our channels, all the different leagues. So they obviously watch a lot of us.
Yep.
And they're ranked 7th in the world, and their squad value is 107.4 million.
Wow,
Squad
nice.
value. And I checked their game week history, and Shannon has taken 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, 36, 40 points in hits.
Man or woman after my own heart, right there.
Yeah. On 3 occasions, they've taken 8-point hits.
Wow.
So 40-point hits altogether this season, which is incredible. They're in 7th, and
Nice.
yeah, just wanted to give that person a shout out because they're just
people
having an
can
amazing
be a bit
season.
too terrified about hits, but if they pay off, if you know they're for a nailed player that that you can make some points on, then like especially in a double, really, you could be a bit more saucy with your hits because you got double the chance of getting some of those points back. So maybe I'm a bit more liberal with my hits. I don't know, but I don't think they're as evil as a lot of kind of die-hard FPL fans seem to think they are. I rose really quite high quite quickly last season by taking a lot of consecutive hits. But what I will say is that you do have to, it's not about chasing the bandwagons. It's about going, if you're going to take the hits, go after the players that have been consistent in points already. Try not to just go, oh, that person did well last week, I'll get them in, So that's the only thing, because otherwise they can go a bit horribly wrong like they have this season for me. So
yeah,
definitely.
But yeah, just wanted to give that person a shout out. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Okay, you got anything to add about the hits?
Well, it's sort of, I mean, as much as the wild cards and the hits it's a scary thing. You're not meant to take hits. I mean, it sort of shows no matter when you take your wild card, you play your cards correctly, you take hits at the right time for the right players, it can all come back. Like, I remember, I can't remember when it was. I remember Sanchez having a ridiculous haul a few years ago. And if you triple capsed him, he had like, I think it was 70 points or something like that.
Yeah.
If you'd have taken a -4 to get Sanchez in, that's only 66-point difference.
Yeah.
But you do it at the right times and it can pay off. So credit where it's due. Take the right risks. Take the right risks. You get the right rewards. That is a really big tongue twister for someone as unintelligent as me.
Cool. Okay, we'll have one more question then, Brett. Pass
So
over
this
to
is-
Jay, this one.
Yeah, sure. This will also be a good one for Kurt, maybe after Jay as well. So it's about Salah. So Vince Champman wants to know, should we be worried about Salah not scoring in open play? Obviously, a lot of his points coming from penalties in recent weeks. So what do you reckon, Jay? As a Salah owner, does that worry you at all? Or?
I mean, there's always a slight worry when something like that happens because you ideally want your player to be scoring from open play, and then the penalties is kind of something that is just an additional benefit to your player's points. But his underlying stats are still good. He is winning the penalties as well. So if he didn't take them, he'd have got the assists. So for me, I'm not too worried about it just yet. We'll see if it continues, then I might start worrying about it a little bit more. But right now, I think a lot of us have other issues to be fixing other than Mohamed Salah. He's getting us points. He's returning points. If he goes and gets a penalty every game for the rest of the season, I'll be happy. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about Mohamed Salah for now. I do think he's had chances to score in open play. They just haven't gone in. So that could change all of a sudden, a bit like the Bournemouth fixture. Suddenly, he comes out and scores a hat-trick. So I'm still keeping the faith. I'm still happy with him, and he's probably going to be my captain this game week.
Okay, so Kurt.
Would that worry you, Kurt, if you owned him, for example, now? Would him not scoring from open play worry you?
It would worry me for any player. It's a tough one, but he's winning all of his penalties. So if he was the one who wasn't winning the penalties, let's say Firmino goes down once, Mane goes down once, a handball from a Milner cross the other one, that's all right. That and the fact, you'll trigger some people, you'll please others. He's potentially going down a bit too softly. Could they continue? Could they all of a sudden be stamped out and he's given a few bookings for simulation? But as Jano says, the underlying stats are there. So having said that, he might not get a penalty in the next 3 game weeks. He might score about 8 goals. So you never know with Salah. You never know. But the fact he's not giving any of his penalties away to Firmino at the moment is a positive. I think people were worried when he did that. But
I think if VAR was around, we'd probably all be a little bit more worried than what we are right now. But at the moment, this season, we'll just enjoy it while we can. I guess. Cool. Okay, so our random question this week comes from Jeff at Thunder66UK. What was our favourite children TV show growing up? His was Thundercats, so I'll go with that one first. So, Jay, what was your favourite children's TV programme when you were growing up?
Well, I think like most people, it would have changed through your childhood. But I'd have to say the first one I remember absolutely loving was Power Rangers. Absolutely loved Power Rangers. I had the toys. I had a Green Ranger dagger that I used to run around with. So yeah, Power Rangers would definitely have to be my answer.
Cool. And Brett?
For me, probably Dragon Ball Z would be my favourite. I still like it these days, to be fair. Still a big anime fan.
That was quite high on my list as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it starting when I was like 8 or something in primary school on like Cartoon Network, Toonami. And I loved cartoons when I was a kid. I loved like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, all that stuff. But Dragon Ball Z, it's the one that I loved as a kid and still like it now. So I'd have to say that.
Cool. And Kurt?
Remember really early, massive fan of Thunderbirds. I think that was mentioned when the question was asked. I remember massive fan of Thomas Tank Engine, had all the toys, and I'd spend hours. Granted, it was only like 2 years ago when I've grown out of the phase recently. But I used to have all the tracks when I was younger, and I'd across my family living room, I'd do it all, and I'd play with them. And I suppose to grow up a bit, I also liked Ed, Ed, and Eddie, which is, I think, quite a cool program.
Classic.
Yeah.
I would be no surprise to some of you here. I was quite a tomboy when I was growing up, so I loved quite a lot of the shows that have already been mentioned. I was also a massive Super Ted fan. If anyone remembers Super Ted, that's going right back. And Sharky and George. Does anyone remember
Sharky and George? Sharky and George.
Yeah.
That's his Google search.
So yeah, definitely those ones. But yeah, big fan of Thunderbirds and Power Rangers, all those, sure. Okay, and the other one that he had was, what was our favourite Only Fools and Horses moment? His was Del and the hang glider. So mine was the very obvious one where Del Boy goes to rest up against the bar and the bar doors open and he just disappears. That one never fails to get me. That one I always have a good chuckle. But what about you guys? Got any different ones? I
think Batman and Robin has got to be up there for me.
That's a good one.
That is probably one of the best.
Cool. What about you? Brett?
I got to be honest, I haven't really watched enough of it, to be fair. I know there's like a funny scene with a chandelier or something. I always remember there's like a clip with a chandelier, which is always funny. And obviously everyone knows the bar scene, like you mentioned. So that one's pretty good too.
Yeah. Cool. Jay, any different ones?
Okay, just for the record, all three of those were in my top three. But I thought that would happen. So I've gone with Trigger's story about the broom he had for 20 years. And he only changed the brush part 14 times and the handle 17 times.
Well, that's pretty good. I think you got good use out of that broom. Cool stuff. So did we have any polls this week?
Yes, we did. I haven't refreshed though. So this is that part where I wasn't ready. And I now just have to talk for a little bit.
You know when we get to the questions that aren't FPL related, that I'm usually coming to the poll afterwards.
Yeah, I know that, but this one...
But if you're watching and you fancy liking and subscribing while Jay is refreshing...
We also have Super Chat now that we're monetized as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I was just so... I was laughing to myself that you three picked the three that I was going to say about Only Fools and Horses. But at least I prepared for it this time, so all was good.
Cool.
And if YouTube would hurry up, we will get to the polls.
Kurt, did you find some Sharky and George?
No, I did look it up and I don't recognise it, so... Yeah.
Really? Okay, we should be getting there. There we go. Okay, so the polls. We went with polls for this stream that were similar to some of the questions that were asked to us on Twitter. You can, of course, get your poll questions in to us when we do tweet out about our stream. The first one was, which Spurs option is best from Gameweek 23 onwards? The options were Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, Lucas Moura, Eric Lamela, and we did have the choice of other. Dele Alli won with 50% of the vote. Eriksen and Lucas Moura both getting 16% and Lamela only getting 11%. We've got the captain poll, of course, for Game Week 23. Who are we all going to captain? Salah has won with 77%. I think it's becoming quite clear now that people are quite happy to just stick the armband on him for the foreseeable future. But Rashford and Aguero coming in with 11% each as well. And then we got, who's the better Brazilian midfielder? As we answered the question about Anderson or Richarlison to be dropped. And we have 72% going with Felipe Anderson and 27% going Richarlison. But there was a lot of talk in the chat about the difference between a player being a good player and being the better FPL option because of Richarlison's positioning, and if Everton do ever up their game again, how good an option he could be. So those are the poll questions. Thank you for voting in those polls. They'll be there every week, so every time you join the stream, please make sure to check them out and vote. And I guess I should wrap it up now. So thank you for joining the stream. There are various ways in the description you can support the channel. Also check out our own channels as well. And we will let you know on the @FPL WildCats Twitter page when we will be streaming next. Also check us out on Instagram as well. We also announce it there. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all later.